Hello everyone, welcome to this special scruffy edition of Minutia Minute. I'm your host Beardo, and today is the day I'm going to talk Death of the Family. From beginning to end, let's get down to brass tacks. For those of you guys who have been wanting to know what I think, who have been bugging me to know what I think, this is the video for you. I hope you enjoy it. Before I get started, I do want to throw out a little disclaimer here. I actually don't really know what other people think about Death of the Family. What can I say? This is one of the few series that I was able to keep up on over Christmas because it's Batman, how can I not? But it was literally like, hey, I've got 10 minutes, I'm going to sit down and try and read an issue, you know what I mean? So I didn't get to go online and see what people thought of the issues. I didn't really get to talk to my my comic shop regulars about it. This is very much going to be my base opinion about it, completely uninformed opinion, so take it for what it is. If it's derivative, I sincerely apologize. I hope I don't just say what everybody else says. That'd be disappointing. As disappointing for me as it would be for you guys, but I make no promises, so sorry in advance if I do say something really obvious. Second of all, I could step in a hornet's nest today, to put it mildly. If someone, if there's a prevailing opinion that is, very hard fought and people are really passionate about, and I just fly right in the face of it, I'm not gonna know any better. So please, in the comments below, go easy on me if I step in a hornet's nest today. I'm really not planning on doing it, but I do it more often than not on this channel. So thank you for your patience and thank you for your understanding in advance. So, to kick everything off, I think we're just going to kind of go through the story as I see it. Nothing too fancy. I don't remember exactly what happened in which issue. It's all kind of blurred together for me. I haven't gotten a chance to go back and reread, so I'm just going to kind of go through the basic stuff and then we'll get into a little bit more depth with it. I'll talk a little bit about the satellite Batman titles and then we'll call it a day. So without further ado, everything began in issue 13, and you guys know what I thought of this already. I did do a pretty in-depth video of it. In terms of a recap, so you've got the return of the Joker, obviously, but this isn't your ordinary Joker. He's a lot more cunning, he's a lot more evil, he is willing to go a lot further in a more blatant way. He's always been willing to kill, but here he's he gets his hands dirtier than he used to, you know what I mean? He's not just a conniving killer, he's a ruthless killer now. And it definitely shows from the very beginning when he shows up at police headquarters and just starts killing everyone around Commissioner Gordon. This is hardcore, brutal stuff here. I think that this, for me, is one of Scott Snyder's strongest issues of Batman so far, even considering the issues that have come since, because the use of darkness in this and what you don't see really builds tension in a really effective way. I feel like he and Greg Capullo really use the comic book medium to their benefit with issue 13. And even if, everything doesn't play out exactly the way you want it to later on in the series from the things that are set up in issue 13, nevertheless, this is a really stunning issue and stands as definitely my favorite so far from Scott Snyder. Now, at the end of this, you have the biggest plot point, which is Joker shows up at Wayne Mansion and beats Alfred with a crowbar, and you don't know what has happened to him. Now, this leads into a couple of different avenues. You have what's going on with the Joker and what's going on with the Bat family. And we'll start off by talking about what's going on with the Joker. Obviously, he's back. He's kidnapped Alfred. He's gone to police headquarters, started killing people off. And a big part of the first couple issues here is him committing copycat crimes. Copycats of his own crimes from way back in the 1940s when, it was Bill Finger. It's really more Scott Snyder copycatting Bill Finger but adding a twist. So, you've got him poisoning, a well and killing off all of these different people. Again, re-emphasizing the ruthlessness of the Joker, calling out how ruthless he started in the 1940s, but at the same time still racking it up just a little bit and giving that extra sense of tension. Now, at the same time, you've got the Bat family, who is very much flying in the face of Bruce Wayne right now, because you have a couple of things going on. First of all, Joker is bringing to light all of these dirty little secrets that he hasn't told the Bat family. There's always a dirty secret to be found in these kinds of stories, and there is definitely some big ones in this. And so right away you have a sense of distrust amongst the Bat family. In addition, you have Batman, who's claiming, there's no way that the Joker knows that I am Bruce Wayne, and that's definitive. No argument here, like, you can't even talk to me about this, I know it for a fact. And at the same time, he's kidnapped Alfred, and he's doing all of these things to antagonize Bruce Wayne, and, you know, it seems like Bruce Wayne has to explain away all of these things, and that his explanations get more and more crazy and more over the top, but somehow he's just convinced and nobody believes him. And again, the distrust is really getting sown amongst the Bat family very strongly in these middle issues. Now, what ultimately happens, obviously, everyone gets captured by the Joker. As you can see here, he's got Robin, he's got Batgirl, he's got everybody. He gets them all around a table, he lures Batman in, he gets Batman as well, and then you have the big tease of the platters with the chrome domes and what's underneath these chrome domes. And because they've set up Joker as being so much more ruthless, you think, okay, here is the entire Bat family with, you know, their heads on plates, literally. And when you get to the final issue, ultimately you get punked, right? So you have all of their faces on the platters cut off, just like the Joker's face has been cut off, and you think, gross. That's really all you think. But it turns out that's really just kind of a ruse and kind of a prank, very much a Joker trickster moment, which in a sense almost questions the character that they built up for me, because you've got, you know, this really ruthless Joker set up in the beginning that's, you know, not afraid of getting blood on his hands, and all of a sudden you have this big sort of gotcha moment. But that very quickly fades away, because then you find out that his plan really is for the Bat family to pretty much just eat each other by, you know, being injected with the laughing gas and all the usual Joker kinds of things. One thing about probably the weakest point of this issue is you have that moment where, you know, Batman has to make a choice between doing what's right and doing what he needs to for his family and his personal needs, and, you know, that sort of superhero dilemma, right? I don't find those things particularly compelling these days, because we have seen that so much. But ultimately, you get the big climax. Batman basically saves everybody, and much to, I think, probably a lot of readers' surprises, not a whole lot actually changes. You have a couple really poignant character moments in this last issue, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, and that's really it. You don't have any major deaths. The status quo does not change the way you kind of would expect it to in a big event like this, and the story basically wraps up. Now, I do want to address hype and, you know, meeting expectation, because DC really did not set themselves up well with this series, in my opinion. You have what turned out to be a very intimate, character-driven story between two people, Batman and the Joker, and there's a very strong emotional connection there that they're exploring, and that's not something that justifies a crossover in any way. Just because it affects a lot of different characters doesn't mean it affects their books as well. Now, I would compare this to Night of the Owls, where, you know, that it kind of makes sense. Like, even though that crossover was, for the most part, not great, and there were a couple good books, there were a couple bad books, you know, usual crossover, it didn't really, like, that was an epic event. You know what I mean? Like, it affected all of Gotham City, and you had this big, you know, epic is the key word. You know, you couldn't show everything in a single issue, and so they broke it up into all of these different issues, and, you know, all of this parallel action going on at the same time. But it wasn't about a single emotional thread. This is about that, and that's really something that doesn't cross books. Like, it's epic emotionally, but, you know, it's very intimate in terms of story. So even though it is affecting a whole bunch of different people, all of those tie-in books, I'll just tell you right now, were a huge waste of DC's time. With the exception of Batgirl, because it does have its own emotional resonance because of her history. Other than that, they were really just not necessary, and they basically just served as a tease for the big chrome domes that, you know, basically culminated with Batman 17. So for me, Death of the Family is an event. As an event, you have to describe as being pretty lackluster. Because, I mean, you know, there's no big event, there's no big blah, blah, blah. For me, though, Death of the Family, these, you know, these single 5 issues as one cohesive story, I found to be incredibly exceptional. And I'm going to tell you why. again, it's about expectation. If you go in and you think this is going to have huge upheaval, someone's going to die, someone's going to lose a finger, like, you know what I mean, that you're going to be disappointed by this book. And I think that there probably are people out there like that. I don't know, because like I said, I haven't gone to see what people are saying about this, but I'm sure people have had that thought, and there's a certain other book that has since come out that probably hasn't helped Death of the Family's cause at all. But yeah, so the thing that makes this book really good is that character element, and it's been a while since we've had, I mean, even with Court of the Owls, like, you knew at the end you had that Talon book coming out, and there's the whole idea that these stories are just perpetually telling themselves, and DC's never going to have just a nice standalone story arc. It's been, you know, probably like Broken City, in my mind, is like one of the last stories I can think of that was like, yeah, this is just a standalone Batman story that has a beginning, middle, and end. This is the first time that's really happened since then, in my mind. Like, there probably are a few issues here and there, but not on this level anyway. I mean, this is pretty standalone, and what you get out of that is a really nice rounded character study of Batman and the Joker and the greater Bat family and how they all interrelate. And this is where we have to talk about kind of how this book wraps up and why this book isn't derivative, because ultimately what the story is the Joker, basically the idea that the Joker doesn't really want to know who Batman is because it would ruin all the fun, kind of a thing. And like, that's a very derivative idea. And one of the things that we've been saying over and over again since Scott Snyder has started on these books, at least amongst our little YouTube community, I feel like I hear this a lot, is, you know, if anybody else was telling these stories, they'd seem really derivative, but something about the way Scott Snyder brings them to us makes them just, you know, elevates them a little bit, brings them a little bit higher. And this is an absolutely excellent example of that, because Scott Snyder doesn't just stop at, the Joker doesn't want to know who Batman really is because it would ruin the fun. He doesn't do that. He takes it a step further, and you have this incredible psychological moment with the Joker that, for me, it reminded me of the Mr. Freeze moment at the end of Batman Annual #1, where you find out that there's this psychological underpinning that both completely subverts but also completely reinforces all of the continuity that we sort of set up with Mr. Freeze. You know, the idea that he was never really married to Nora Freeze, and that this is just someone he's obsessed with. And it's, you know, bringing that psychological edge to his character, but at the same time, not completely betraying the idea that he is this character that's been trying to save Nora Freeze, and that's why he became Mr. Freeze, right? In this, you have a similar psychological reckoning with the Joker, where you flash back to the past, and you find out exactly why it is that Bruce Wayne knows that the Joker will never know, no matter how outlandish Batman has to, you know, what outlandish lengths Batman has to go to explain away all of these, you know, Joker targeting Bruce Wayne coincidences. He still can definitively say the Joker does not know who Batman is, and it comes from this moment in the past when Bruce Wayne took the card that the Joker left for him in the Batcave, which I didn't really talk about, but that happened. That was referenced. Big holy crap moment, right? And he brings it to Arkham Asylum, and he shows it to Joker and says, I think this belongs to you, or something like that. And basically gives away, I am Batman, go screw yourself. And there's this moment from the Joker where he looks back and he doesn't see Bruce Wayne. Like, he just doesn't, he can't understand. And it's not that he doesn't want to know who Batman is, it's that he's psychologically incapable of figuring that out. Like, there is a wall in his mind that he will never really be able to understand that Batman is a person behind that mask, and it's not, you know, that these things are in any way connected and that he could in any way benefit from that connection. It's literally lost in his psychoses. And that, to me, I thought was really, really interesting. It showed a new side of the Joker and a new spin on an old idea that Scott Snyder just seems to hit out of the park every time he does a Batman story. I mean, he's just awesome at that, and this definitely displayed that well. Now, as far as Fallout goes, and taking that to the next level, you know, there is no major death, but the book is called Death of the Family, and it's referencing, you know, death in the family, which of course in and of itself was a huge event at the time. What you get, in my opinion, is actually something a lot more poignant, which is instead of having all your characters die off, you really see at the very end, and this is the other really important character moment in this, that the Joker kind of wins in the end, because even though they kill the Joker, or they don't kill the Joker, they stop the Joker, you know, Bruce Wayne wants to see his family, wants to be with his family. He sends out, you know, notices to everybody saying, hey, let's hang out, more or less, or whatever it is he says. And no one really wants to be around Bruce. It's very much a, like, you know, I just need to be alone for a while. And even though the Joker, you know, tried to kill all of these people and threw the laughing gas and gets them to try and eat each other and all this awful stuff, that's not what really drives them apart. It's really the psychological damage that the Joker did, because they went through this, you know, terrible ordeal, but also because of the mistrust that the Joker has laid way back in, you know, issue 15 or so, when he's like, you know, Batman doesn't tell you everything, here are all these secrets and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, this is the moment where Joker wins. Joker wins way back in issue 15 or so. I don't remember if it's actually this issue, but it's basically halfway through the arc is where Joker actually really succeeds in his goal, and everyone just needs some time alone. And I think that that is very poignant, and obviously it's not the end of the Bat family, but it sort of represents this end of innocence for them. And in the context of it being the New 52 and, like, no story, like, you know, the stories happened but they didn't happen and all that kind of stuff, if you take this as just, you know, a story of Batman 5 years into his adventures, things are kind of innocent, especially since, remember, in this universe, Jason Todd basically didn't die. Like, he died, but he's been back for a while, and who really cares, right? He was gone for like 3 weeks, and he's back, more or less, in the context of the 5-year DC plan. You know, this, in some ways, is a very important reckoning in terms of the loss of innocence amongst the Bat family, especially coming off of issue 0, where you see, you know, everyone see the Bat symbol for the first time, and you have this inner need to become part of the crusade that Batman has undertaken. If that sets up in issue 0 the you know, the poignant fight that they're gonna fight, this has to be the point where they realize that it's not everything they thought it was going to be. So for me, this series really built well, and I thought was a very good character-driven piece, culminated in an amazing way with issue 17, and didn't have to kill anybody to do it. For those of you guys who watch, you know, graphic issues with Matt and I, obviously we haven't posted in forever. My fault, by the way. I totally admit that, my fault. One of the last things we talked about was death and rebirth, and how is death used as a crutch to tell stories in comics? And this does not use that crutch. And so for me, having a standalone story, a huge event that doesn't result in deaths or huge upheavals like that, but does it in a much more subtle way, in my opinion, like, this is as good as the main, you know, the big two can get at telling their big stories with their big characters. You know, this is what it's really about, and I really found this to be an excellent storyline. So that's pretty much my thought on Death of the Family. Now, as I said at the beginning here, you know, a lot of this has to do, in my mind anyway, a lot of this is about mixed expectations and what is a big event? Does someone have to die? And so on and so forth. And for those people out there who maybe feel like Death of the Family was a little bit of a letdown because, you know, no one died, what the hell? To make matters worse, there was this thing that happened, and I already flashed this comic book once. I do need to talk a little bit about this, but it's a whole separate video, really. I will say that don't let this event in any way color Death of the Family, because this is coming from two totally different editorial standpoints. And without being too cryptic, that's where I'm going to actually leave it off, because if I go any further, I'm going to spend a ton of time babbling about this. So join me again soon. I'll talk about the other big Batman event that happened. I'll talk about, maybe I'll kind of wrap things up at the end of that video with some compare and contrast between why this works for me and why this, spoilers, ultimately does not. And we'll just talk some more comics. So anyway, expect me to get back again soon to talk Batman Incorporated, Death of Damian, right here on Minutia Minute. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed my Death of the Family recap. Let me know what you think down below. I'm really curious to know. Anyway, this is Beardo signing off for now. I'll talk to you guys again soon.